Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here's another deck profile for you guys today. This time it's on Lair Darkness. Now this is a strategy I've been looking to go back to for a while. It's actually the deck that got me this far on YouTube in the first place. So I really owe a lot to this deck. But anyway, I decided to go back to it and decided to rearrange it a little bit and try out some new, different, unique tech cards that actually help this deck, just basically function as a whole. So anyway, figured I'd show you guys what I got this time around and let's get started. So one thing about Lair Darkness, for those who don't know, it's a deck that revolves around tributing for cost in order to, activate effects. And the best way to do this is simply to get a hold of your trap cards. And of course, one of our main monsters, which we're about to get started with, basically enables this strategy. So starting off with 3 copies of Lilith, Lady of Limit. This card reads is that if it's normal summon, its original attack is half, which isn't a problem. But the main part is that you can tribute 1 dark monster as a quick effect. And keep in mind, tributing is cost in just about everything in this deck. So, and then you reveal 3 trap cards from your deck. Your opponent picks one at random to sit to your side of the field. So it does not go to your hand. So a card like Ash Blossom will not work. And plus, not to mention, Lilith can basically tribute herself too. So yeah, Lilith acts as both a form of interruption, spot removal, and plussing. So that's what's so great about this card. Next, 3 copies of Arima, the Wicked Warden. So basically, this guy's terraforming. You can discard it to search out Lair of Darkness, but he also has a tributing effect too. So when this card is on the field, of course, you can tribute 1 dark monster to draw a card, or if you tribute another dark monster other than this card, you can search out a dark monster with 2,000 or more defense points. So this is basically how you get Darkus Diabolus out. But also, again, for the draw power, it's not too bad either. Next up, 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld. So you might be thinking, what isn't this deck like super vulnerable to like disruption, like Impermanence, Veiler? Well, yeah, so or even Ash Blossom. So yeah, if you have your Tour Guide out and you normal summon it, yeah, you do have the risk of getting negated, but keep in mind, there are ways to still facilitate this card. So Tour Guide basically acts as bait, and that's what I love about this card. So yeah, again, it's vulnerable to 3 different hand traps, even Cyframe Gear Gamma. But again, if you know how to facilitate it properly, it shouldn't be much of an issue anyway. But anyway, Tour Guide, yeah, it's just a good way to get a free body out, and you're mostly going to aim for either Sangan or Skarm, or even another Lilith, because, again, that's still pretty good. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on, we are running 1 copy of Sangan. I didn't run this last time simply because I just kind of forgot to do so, honestly. But yeah, once this card hits the grave, you can search out any monster with 1,500 or less attack points from your deck to your hand. Of course, it is eroded, so that means you can't use that card's effect this turn, but that's still not too... That's really not a problem, and you'll see what this card is going to be primarily going to be used for. So, but yeah, moving on. 1 copy of Skarm. Once it's sent to the graveyard during the end phase, you can search out any level 3 Fiend monster. 1 Darkus Diabolus. I mean, this deck does need a big beater. Can't be targeted or kaiju, which is really nice. Plus, you contribute a dark monster to force them to rip a card out of their hand back into their deck. Yeah, it either has to go to the top or the bottom of the deck, but at least, they still essentially neg 1 for a turn, so that's pretty good. Now, in this variation, I am running the Artifact Engine, so I am running 1 Scythe. I'm a little iffy on Moral Attack. I was actually thinking about running a 2nd copy of Scythe, just because I feel like summoning from the extra deck is actually one of the most important things right now, and honestly, to be able to stop your opponent from accessing that, I think that's a little bit better, because Moral Attack is like, yeah, you can pop a face-up card, but considering that you can basically tribute cards for cost anyway, that's why I'm a little iffy on this one. Let me know in the comments on what you guys think. And to round up our monsters, the only hand traps I'm actually running are 2 copies of Ghostbill, which is actually one of the best hand traps this format anyway. And what's really fun is that Sangan can search this out, so that's the reason why I decided to go with this option. Yeah, you could also run Ash Blossom or Effect Veiler, but I felt like Ghostbill just works a little bit better because it stops a lot of things. It stops Tri-Brigade Revolt. It actually stops Drytrons. And yeah, it's just like anything that facilitates the graveyard, this is probably going to be the best way to stop them. So yeah, but again, that's just my opinion. Moving on to spells already. 3 copies of Lair. Definitely the staple of the deck. As long as this card's on the field, everything becomes dark, and once per turn, you contribute a monster for cost on your opponent's side of the field, so that's pretty nice. And during the end phase, and this is a mandatory effect, you have to special summon tokens equal to the number of monsters that were tributed, and depending on whose turn it was, will determine who gets the tokens. So if it's your turn, you get the tokens. If you tribute it during your opponent's turn, they get the tokens. So just bear that in mind. 1 Terraforming. 3 Pot of Prosperity. If you don't have access to this, You can play Pot of Extravagance. Extravagance is still an excellent option. You'll just have to rearrange your extra deck accordingly for Extrav to work. So just bear this in mind. But yeah, Pot of Prosperity is a little bit better because it lets you dig your deck out and kind of pick out the card you do want to add to your hand. So, and again, this is actually why I like Tour Guide in this deck, because there are ways you can kind of like bait out hand traps. And Pot of Prosperity is one of those cards that just helps you keep going. Now, the newest addition to this deck, which actually I have ran this card once before, but for this build, I decided to bring it back for Ties of the Brethren. Ties of the Brethren is super good. Now, this is actually one of the reasons why I'm not running the Dragoon packages, because this card kind of conflicts with that, unfortunately. But again, the whole point is to simply wall up on monsters. That way you have them ready for tribute fodder for whenever you need to use your effects. But again, this is primarily why Tour Guide is so good, because again, it baits out a hand trap. Even if it gets negated, and as long as it stays on the field and you open up with this, you can still go off. So you play Ties of the Brethren, bring out a Lilith and a Sandgan. Lilith will be at full power, by the way. And then you could distribute that Sandgan for cost, get some trap cards, and get a search off for a hand trap. So you basically never truly neg with this deck. Yeah, you do have to pay 2,000 life points, but again, that's really a small price to pay. So like Ties of the Brethren is super good. And to round up our spells, I'm actually only playing 2 copies of Super Poly, and you'll see why in a minute, why I decided to only run 2. Normally I would run 3, but I'm actually trying out a secret, or not a secret, but a new tech card that really caught my attention, and you'll see momentarily once I get to the trap lineup. But anyway, that pretty much rounds up the spells. Now we're moving on to the traps. So for trap cards, because I am running artifacts, 3 copies of Sanctum. That's all there is to it, really. 3 back to the front. The best Monster Reborn card for this deck. 2 Dogmatic of Punishment. You send an extra deck monster and get rid of a monster your opponent controls, as long as it's equal or less than the attack points. And you basically just send cards like Intis off with it, because yeah, you get a free pop with it too. So punishment is pretty annoying. 2 copies of Trap Trick. Of course, it does have the drawback where once it resolves, you're only allowed to activate 1 trap. But again, the fact that it just gives you access to a free trap card anyway, just by banishing a normal trap and getting one for the same copy, it's still not too bad. Now, the new tech card I'm running, and again, this caught my attention because I was just looking through my bulk. It's called Boo Boo Game. So for those who have never actually seen this before, this came from Lightning Overdrive. So during damage calculation of a monster battles, you take no battle damage. That's not the important bit. The real important bit is this effect. If this set card in its owner's control is destroyed by your opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target up to 2 normal traps in your graveyard except Boo Boo Game, set them to your field, and they can be activated this turn. So that's actually like, holy crap, this is actually pretty good. Lilith can bring this out. And the fact is like, some people like to main deck Harpy's Feather Duster out of nowhere, and it catches you by surprise. But if you had this set, and if you manage to break it off of Lilith's effect, that's pretty good. I was actually tempted to put in a second copy just for that sake, because again, it recycles your trap cards without the need of banishing them. And that's what I like about it. So like, again, you can get a card like Back to the Front and Dogmatic of Punishment back right away, or even Artifact Sanctum, just to, you know, like make sure it gets popped again. That way you could just, you know, pop a card on your opponent's side of the field, or just bring out one of your artifact monsters. So yeah, Boo Boo Game really caught my attention. I was like, how did I miss this off of Lightning Overdrive? It's actually pretty good. But anyway, the last card to round it off is Metaverse, which again just gets you access to another Lair of Darkness. But yeah, again, I just wanted to talk about Boo Boo Game for a sec, just to show you guys what this card actually does for those who hadn't seen it before. But anyway, that's it for the main deck. That was 40 cards. So the extra deck is coming up. Starting off with 1 B-Cop. Of course, you already know what this is for. It's good for protection, and it's super easy to make. 1 Artifact Dagda. That's another way just to get access to your Scythe. That way you can just like set it, and if your opponent pops it, you know, that's their mistake. 1 Almirage. 1 Barricade Bork Blocker, because you definitely want to make sure your Lair of Darkness does not get destroyed. So yeah. 1 Nightmare Phoenix. 1 Nightmare Unicorn. And of course, Boral Sword Dragon, which is easy to make, but most of the time, the way I bring this card out is usually through Waking the Dragon. So, yeah, like, it's not hard to make whatsoever, but sometimes, you know, you could just use Waking the Dragon to bring this out. For Super Poly targets, 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp, 1 Starving Venom, and of course, 1 Trifeo Veridum. To go along with my Dogmatic of Punishments, 1 Intis, 1 Cyframe Lord Omega, which even then, if I'm up against the Dogmatica matchups, this is a good card to just, these are just good combo cards just to, you know, just to punish him for that. So yeah. And for more Waking the Dragon targets, 1 Ultimate Falcon, my personal favorite Naturia Exterio, and 1 Megaclops. Just a big beater that's immune to everything, well, immune to monsters except Xyz monsters. So yeah, I mean, I don't really need to stress enough where this is going. So yeah. All right, so that's it for the extra deck. Now we're moving on to the side deck. Side deck, I really had to think about this one because again, side deck spacing is kind of tight. Same with the extra deck spacing. So I decided for my side deck, I decided to go 3 copies of Phantasme. You know, just because, you know, Link monsters are still pretty good. Virtual World is actually really good right now, and that's why I decided to try running this Earth-Shattering Event. Since my deck does not really Foolish Burial a lot at all. In fact, it doesn't even do that at all whatsoever. If a card is sent from the deck to the graveyard, you can target 1 card in either player's graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, which again, you could basically recycle your own cards. Also, neither player can send cards from the deck to the graveyard for the duration of this turn. So that is super good. Next, 3 copies of Imperm. Imperm to me is more of a going second card because, like, in case if I win the dice roll and I go first, I'm pretty much good. But when my opponent's pretty much already knows what I am going to be playing, they're going to want to make sure they want to try and stop me at all times, and they're going to pump out like multiple negates just to prevent Lair from resolving. So this is where cards like Imperm come into play. Next, 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster, you know, just to deal with other back row heavy strategies. 2 copies of Ice Dragon's Prison. It's not just for Dragoon, but it's just for like any annoying monster that I can't really deal with too well, or I just don't have an inherent out to it, like a Zeus. This is a good way to stop that, or at least just stop the cards that can go into it. So yeah, Ice Dragon's Prison, not too bad. And next, 2 copies of Waking the Dragon. So like, you know, again, if I get blown out by like a Harpy's Feather Duster or a Lightning Storm, it's just a good way to punish the player. So yeah. All right, so that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you guys again next time.